Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome into another episode of Infection Podcast. We are your weekly source on the intersection, the coverage of both the video game and political, I guess you call them spheres. They used to be disconnected. Now they are seemingly one. My name is Nick Craig. You can check out our website, infectionpodcast.com. Joining me as he does each and every week, Brian with an I, Aldridge. Hey, Brian, what's going on?
And not too much. Of course, if you want to find me, get me at Boise Computer on Twitter or Brian Aldridge at Gab Parlor Getter and Truth Social. Always great things to spread yourself out because you never know which one's going to go away. Or
you never know which one you'll get unfairly and unjustly banned or deleted.
I feel pretty safe on Twitter at the moment. Yeah. So.
Well, do you see the new CEO's
feel like people
a dog?
Actually can talk. Yeah. That's actually. I think that actually is his dog too. I think that's the type of dog. He got one of the.
I'm sure the
Shinu
Emu dogs.
The doggy coins. Yeah.
Yeah.
So or the Doge coins. What do they call it? Doji or doggy? I don't know what it is. Doge
well, the name of the dog is a Shinu Emu or something like that.
He was really into that
Doge.
That Bitcoin. Is it Dogecoin?
Dogecoin, yeah, Doge, D-O-G.
Yeah, I wonder if he got it just to be a troll with
that. I mean, if the past is any indication of the future, Brian, then yes, I would say that he in fact did purchase this probably very expensive, ridiculous dog just so we could take pictures of it as the CEO of Twitter. All right. Nevertheless, we've been covering over the last couple of weeks the unbelievable reaction in the video game industry, the tech industry, and even kind of like the I guess you call it like the cultural industry, like the cultural magazines and all that, those industries that have been just ripping Hogwarts Legacy a new one. And it looks like now we're back to the video game industry a little bit. Games Done Quick, which is a speed running, they're kind of like a directory of speedruns. They're like kind of like the gatekeepers of who keeps the scores, like the Guinness Book of World Records for speed running. They will not be allowing Hogwarts Legacy speedruns. It's on their disallowed game list, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be kind of an odd one to do a speed run of because, I mean, there is main story. I know they do speed runs on almost everything, but it's kind of an open world. You know, there is a main quest line. But yeah, it's not really one of the speed run games. Of course, someone wants to get first place in it and be faster than everyone else. But it is odd that they pick this one and say, we're not going to do speed runs of this game when it's one of the top games in the world right now. It's got the number of sales, and it's barely just releasing. It's not even out on all the platforms it's going to come out on, and it's still one of the top selling games.
I will submit to you, however, that a game like Red Dead Redemption is on that list.
Yeah, which, I mean, if you look at
the equivalent in terms of like the flow of the concept of the game, right? It's not significantly different.
Yeah, there's a storyline, a main storyline that you can follow, and it's pretty much a begin to end. How fast, without doing any of the side quests, how fast can you get through that main storyline? So there will be people that would do that as a speed run. I think eventually they're just going to drop this. Right now, I think it's a lot of people that eventually people are going to stand up and say, this is silly. What's the point of you sitting here and having these fake things that you're all upset about that aren't even based on reality? Because there's not really a reason that they should be upset with Hogwarts Legacy just because they don't like the author's opinion on a certain topic. When there's plenty of people that don't like their opinions on the exact same topic. Should they be canceled? I mean, in their eyes, they would say, well, why would I be canceled? I don't have abhorrent, hateful, disgusting views. Well, I bet you there's a lot of people that probably think you do, especially some aspects of it.
Of course, absolutely.
Especially with some of the things that they push with this, as far as it's all about perspective. Because, you could look at one side where you look at it and you say, well, you're trying to mutilate children. You're trying to put books about sex, and I mean there was one where abhorrent. I was listening to a video of a dad going in and reading from a book that they put in the library, and them getting upset about it. This has happened a lot of times, but the book is talking to teenagers, and it's giving them advice on how to properly sext. which is supposed to be illegal because that's child porn.
Yes, if you're under the age of
producing
18,
child porn. But the book that they're putting in the library is helping you to be able to make naked pictures of yourself tastefully and to do it so that maybe they won't realize who you are by making don't show birthmarks, find ways to, so like it's a book that's encouraging people to make children on how to make child porn. That there's plenty of people, I'm sure, on one side of the aisle would say, well, that's horrible, encouraging children to make child porn. Well, maybe we should allow games of anybody who believes on that side be able to, participate in all these things. Or we could have the person who just doesn't think that, the female's rights should be infringed upon. She's the bad one. Correct. Child porn, that's nothing compared to someone who has an opinion you don't like. I mean, that's kind of the two sides of the coin that you're looking at. It's kind of silly.
Yeah, one is completely unbelievable, illegal, and unrealistic. The other is just somebody's opinion. Yeah, it's quite
I don't like your opinion.
Yeah. So, to shift the gears a little bit on it, have you been playing it the past week?
Yeah, I've still been playing. I don't know how far I am through the story, but the story keeps unfolding. The main quest line. I've been trying to. Kind of like Red Dead Redemption, I'm not sure how much of the side stuff I'm trying to balance it because I remember Red Dead Redemption when I realized how close I was to the end. I was just like, I'm going to try to do every side quest as it was. I was trying to milk everything I could out of the game. So with this one, I'm trying to kind of keep doing side quests because I'm not sure. I mean, I feel like I'm only halfway through the map. There's a whole half of the map down the bottom I haven't even unlocked yet. Or gone, tried to even go down to. So, who knows? The problem is I've run into games where it seems like, I've got half the map, but then for some reason that last half of the map is a couple hours of content. Like they just blow through and it's all just relating to like the end quest. And I just don't want that to happen. I've been really enjoying it. Kind of because you go through and do some of the main quests, but then you go when you catch up with school things and where that teaches you different spells you might need. So I've been trying to make sure I'm balancing it out and not rushing the main quest along too far. But it's still fun. I had a lot of fun. The mechanics are still good. Minimal amount of bugs. The only issue I had was one character at partway through, I don't know how many hours ago it was, but there was just some issues with their layering of their clothes and their skin to where you kind of saw like a fluttering distortion. With something with the layer, the way the model was layering, that's the only issue I've really had. And if that's it, that's pretty good for a game that's not really put out any updates. I think they put out one update that fixed mainly PC issues. They haven't put out a ton of patches, so it was pretty stable out of the gate for what I've been able to play.
I wasn't even gonna think. I didn't even think about. I thought about this earlier. I didn't even think about bringing it up here on the show. I have not heard that this game is this rampant bug fest like I don't know, maybe a little game called Cyberpunk or a game like Red Dead Redemption that was just rampant with bugs on launch.
In the beginning, yes.
It's not. I mean, you played Cyberpunk on launch. Is it even in the same caliber?
Yep. No, I didn't run into any of those similar types of bugs. This is built on Unreal Engine. So this is something we keep talking about, the stability of having an engine that doesn't, look at Cyberpunk. They were patching that, but a lot of the problems were from that engine, of them trying to make it work with all these new technologies on something that was built for Witcher. Yeah. Built for a game that was put out 10 years ago or something. That was a lot of the issues that they ran into, and they were trying to catch up. Same thing with Red Dead Redemption. If you look at what they did, they have an engine that they were building the old Grand Theft Auto on, and some Max Payne. They updated it some for Max Payne, but they hadn't touched it for years and years and years. And then all of a sudden they're trying to implement all of these things to make it more modern so that everything looks good for the new game that they've been producing. You run into problems with that. There's definitely an upside to using an engine that you don't have to maintain as a company, and that when you just start building your game, the thing is stable. Because I think they put this out in Unreal Engine 5, and the thing has had minimal issues. And any issues that I think you would have would be more of design issues. Maybe how a quest is laid out, or how an object is set in there. So maybe, it's hard to get past a section or something like that. It's not that it's crashing especially on console. I haven't run into any performance issues, but I'm running it on an Xbox Series X.
Oh, okay. I thought you were playing it on PC, so that's even more interesting.
Yeah, I've been running on a 4K HDR with no issues.
So maybe that's a little bit less susceptible to bugs than a PC version might
be.
The
PC one was the one that was having more issues. That's what the thing they said is PC was definitely having issues compared to console.
But now that I think about it, when I think of the Cyberpunk launch, that game was also a disaster on console too, right? I very vaguely remember it. Yeah, I mean, and it's typical
AI
for games.
Was just rubber banding and doing crazy things. Quests were broken. I mean, it was kind of like H1Z1 in the beginning, where you're just like, what in the world is happening? Steps from miles away, all the lovely things you run into.
Let me ask you this real quick, and then we can move on. You think this kind of sets the standard for other games that are coming out now? Is that, hey, maybe you guys, it breaks the trend that every game that's developed in modern, the modern 2020s is just going to be a heaping pile of garbage on launch because my bugs, and soon TM not finished. Obviously, that's not the case. You think this maybe puts a little bit of heat under some other game devs to clean up their act?
Oh, definitely. And I think also one thing that they did very different is they did not do a ton of hype and get people so wound up about upcoming features. They showed some basic things like flying, but they kept most of their things pretty secret as far as how the game was going to be. And so when the game came out, people were surprised, unlike a lot of these other games that we've run into where people are mad because they built up some fantasy in their head about what the game was going to be like. This one was the opposite. People were expecting less than what they received from the game. And I think that was, whether that was intentional, it just happens to be how it came out because they weren't releasing a ton of information. But that, I think, was the biggest surprise to people, is that the map was bigger than they thought. There were more features than they thought. They didn't do a lot of showing off, because other games, what would they do? They would show off the castle so much that you would just pretty much see every inch of it, expecting there to be more, showing off all the map, expecting it to be, the half of the map. Here, they showed you so little that when you saw the map, you're like, oh, this thing's huge. When you saw Hogwarts, the school, it was just way bigger than you, in more detail than you expected. So it made everybody happier because they under-promised and over-delivered when it came to the actual game.
Interesting. Well,
I think will be. Hopefully it adjusts, and a lot of beta testing as well. I'm sure that they had a lot of testing that you didn't hear anything about. It was pretty quiet, as far as you didn't have any leaks from the testers. You didn't have testers complaining about long hours, and it was just the game got released quietly. And then you got all of the comments were from the game itself, people playing it.
F.A. Hambo in the Twitch chat is saying, reminds me of Cyberpunk. I remember seeing hundreds and hundreds of people agreeing that it was going to be the best game of the decade before there was a single gameplay trailer release. I tell you what, I don't pat myself on the back that often. I absolutely nailed Cyberpunk. I could not have been more right about that situation.
Yeah, because you said that it was going to underdeliver pretty much.
It only could. I mean, they made it out of it was going to be the reincarnation of Jesus Christ, and it turned out to be a really mediocre, subpar video game. I mean, it only could fail. I mean, they literally set it up to fail. It's not even close.
Yep, and that was the frustrating thing, is I really was hoping because I liked the Cyberpunk lore. We did those Cyberpunk sessions and kind of saw what the possibilities and how perfectly it would dovetail into a video game. I just figured, well, if they took that, turned it into a video game that had a lot of features and just a big open world that you could kind of play in, and that was not what Cyberpunk was. Exploring the world was no fun because there was, other than the quests you were doing, there wasn't really anything to do. There wasn't AI roaming around and doing anything like Red Dead Redemption 2. Where you felt like there was a world happening around you. The world was purely for the moment in the quest that you were doing, and there was no reason to explore because you know that there was nothing outside of what you were getting ready to do.
Yeah. F.A. Hambo says there was a good few devs secretly commenting about one of the trailers, assuming for Cyberpunk, being completely fake behind closed door, and of course, but there was a lot of warning signs. Yeah, well, and that's what it comes down to.
I want to give you your quote. So 8/27 of 2019, Nick. Here's what Nick said: Cyberpunk is overhyped and will fall short of expectations. That's what you said. August 27th, 2019.
Now that was me making a very, very conservative guess. I could have said it is going, and if at the time I would have said it's going to be an abysmal dumpster fire, people would have been like, "You suck." And you're just and I would have been spot on. That was the most conservative approach I could have taken to it.
Well, and that was controversial at the time as well.
Yeah, it was super controversial at the time.
Because everybody was thinking this was so hot. You know, they're ready for it. This is going to be so good. It's coming from a studio that just, releases masterpieces. And bam, there you go.
But we had firsthand. I made this prediction after PAX West in 2019 when we went there. One of the things that we did, and we didn't plan a lot. Like, we didn't schedule a lot of events outside of going to PAX. But we said there is no we are going to go to the Cyberpunk IGN party.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that game.
We were looking forward to the game and looking forward to the party, which was a great party. No, there's no objection that it was a great party.
Ridiculous.
There's no objection. And as the event was getting ready to be started, it turned out that none of the developers were even there. They were all still in, where are they, Sweden? Somewhere, some European country.
Not Sweden, Poland, I think, or something like
Poland,
that. Poland,
wherever. They were like, oh, yeah, we're too far behind the game, so we didn't make it. They literally didn't come.
So that was
the indication that it wasn't going to happen.
They had the drink tickets, and that was it.
Because there was nothing else there. Like, the
cups.
whole point was,
we had cups
I have
as
the
well.
Cups.
Cups
I do
and
have
drink
the cups.
tickets was all.
And it was supposed to
be.
It was supposed to be a QA with the developers. We were hyped to go and hear some of the, and they were supposed to show gameplay. It was supposed to be freaking sick, and they just didn't show up. And after that, I knew that it was going to be a failure, and I was right. Nevertheless, this show is not how great Nick is, which we could spend hours on every Tuesday. Brian, harping back on our Christmas program, we talked about the general state of the economy and how that is transmitted into the gaming industry, because many of those purchases happen to be, very luxury. And it looks like we've got some more stuff on that.
So, okay, we talked about Roblox. Remember, within the last couple of months, we talked about how well Roblox was doing. It's making ridiculous numbers in sales, huge player numbers. Well, Roblox reported nearly a $1 billion net loss in 2022.
Ouch.
And now, so that was a net loss. Their revenue was $2.2 billion in 2022. 16% up year on year. But their bookings were $2.9 billion, which is 5% up year on year. Net loss $934 million, compared to the $504 million lost the previous year. So they've near doubled their losses from 2021 to 2022. And here going into just in quarter four, they had a $291 million loss.
Damn.
So they're bringing in money, but they're losing money awfully quick. And it's amazing for a game like that. How can you be losing so much money when it comes to a game that's free to play?
Well,
people are making content for you, other than you making the platform better.
It's called productive accounting, and that's what these companies do. If you'll notice, the largest losses that are ever reported are companies like this.
Yeah, and this is so. One thing is that they said that during their financial report this year, they are going to stop reporting its monthly metrics after March of 2023.
So that's going to be a problem because they're a publicly traded company. Now, they're not required to provide that. Right? They just do that. But if I was a shareholder of the company, that would be a huge red flag. We were talking about warning flags and warning signs and red flags with Cyberpunk. This, to me, if I was an investor, a large investor in Roblox, I'd get the hell out, because that is not what you don't want to pull that information away from your shareholders and your investors.
Well, and here's what they say. Here's their reasoning. They said our basic reasoning is simply that month-to-month variability in our results is often more volatile than quarterly results, and thus drives more short-term market reactions.
Exactly.
So when people see huge losses, it makes them freak out and they dump your stock. Is what I get out of that.
Okay, but if you're looking at their numbers, though, it doesn't seem like 1 month they're losing like 900 million, and every other month it's like 5 million. It seems like based on the fact they're consistently losing. If you've got 12 months in here, they're consistently losing what, like $92,000 a month or something like that. Some average the number out like that. So it's not like, it doesn't seem like 1 month they're losing all their money. So that to me is kind of nonsense. So they're still going to they have to do the quarterly reports. They don't have a choice.
Yeah, they'll do quarterly because they're required. Now, they claim that 2022 was a year of innovation and invention for Roblox. So supposedly they're going to make excuses of losing money for that. And in here it says they're going to be rolling out in-game advertisements in 2023.
Now, that's
That'll
huge.
Be a way for them to bring in extra income, because with 65 million daily active users just in January, that ad source is pretty huge, especially with the fumblings of YouTube and a lot of other platforms not performing well. You'll get advertisers that are looking how to hit certain demographics. Well, this is a very specific demographic that will beg their parents for money and usually get what they want in the end, right? I think that you'll definitely get advertisers that want to hit this, where this is a very difficult target to really hit, to be able to get that specific marketing too. So I who knows? Maybe they'll turn this around.
They will.
But, nearly $1 billion in 2022, maybe that'll change next year.
Yeah. Creative accounting.
Let's talk about a company that is mainly an advertising company, Facebook, because they've been not doing so well when it comes to advertising. But their VR division in 2022, so talking a similar year, lost $13.72 billion.
Ouch, that hurts too.
I mean, so that makes Roblox look like chump change here. Not really that bad, but 13.72 billion, and this whole metaverse thing, VR.
So
it's causing a lot of issues in the company at the moment. People not very happy.
Can I jump in here? I'm kind of like a financial nerd. When I'm not working, and I'm like just sitting home and I'm in my office and I'm working on stuff, I have CNBC on constantly because I find it fascinating. And unlike Fox Business, where they are like half political, half business, CNBC is like pretty much just business. It's great. The only decent NBC product that they have. They've been talking about Meta for years on CNBC, and I still to this day do not understand what the hell Facebook was trying to do. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars per month dumping it into this metaverse that I never saw materialize in anything more than people virtually sitting behind like a boardroom table going, hi, and shaking their hands and having a virtual conversation. Maybe this is the biggest money laundering scheme of all time, because they never showed the metaverse, from what I can gather, Brian, never existed. Now they have the Oculus system, which is, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about this metaverse that they were creating, this entire universe of VR, and we never saw it. Like it seemingly never existed.
I mean, for the amount of money they put into it, they should have just bought Roblox.
They could have bought Roblox a gazillion times over.
Mm-hmm. Because that really is what they were trying to create, but poorly. Create something. For me, I think the problem is nobody really knows what metaverse is.
No, of course not.
It's not really defined at the moment. Well,
no.
How about you create a platform where people can make things? Because that was the internet, right? They're trying to make a virtual internet, because that's what the internet was back in the heyday, before it got so locked down and everything was monetized and, whatever. It used to be you could make something on the internet, which was like Facebook and whatever platforms, Twitter, and it would grow into something and get its whole own following, and it would blow up. Well, they're wanting to create a virtual place where you could make things and create things and build up communities and kind of like be the Facebook of something virtual where you could walk around in it. Roblox is that. If you could get it for adults.
Agree with your point. That's obviously not what they were trying to do, because
that's all the demos showed that. I mean, that seems like what they were kind of creating was something where you create objects and put it in a virtual world.
Would it have cost them $30 billion to do that? No. The answer is no.
The demos that I saw were stupid. I mean, the graphics were poorly done.
Hold on.
Virtual characters.
You're missing my point. I'm saying if the goal was to make Roblox or Gary's Mod or one of these games in VR, which is what you're describing, and I would agree makes sense, how could they possibly have spent billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars on that? It's not that hard. They already they didn't even make the Oculus. They bought it from somebody else.
Yeah. So here, do you know what I think that's going to take to actually make a metaverse? I think now with the recent changes in AI, I think that is what is going to bring on the metaverse, as far as making a system where AI can build things, because people aren't going to be able to make anything by themselves that's super cool that they can show off to people. But if you can use AI to let people make things like virtual worlds and things like that, that'll be the only way that this happens. Have it to where people can generate things,
it's an interesting
big
idea.
Buildings, mixing it with AI, because people don't have the ability or the time to sit and to make things detailed that people are going to go in and be like, oh, this is awesome. Just doesn't happen. Like, what else are you going to create? They had the Eiffel Tower that that Zuckerberg had in his little area that looked like, a high school art project. As far as like a person learning how to use Blender made in high school. It wasn't anything impressive, but you mix that with AI, and you somehow let people kind of generally design something, and the AI fill in the blanks to where people that don't have abilities like that can make cool things. Then people will put the time in to make something that's cool that other people will come see.
Yeah,
I think you have to mix the two, because that's the only way you can make enough content to make something that's bigger than life without having it be something that just ends up looking really stupid, because that's what people make by hand for the most part. Your average person.
I think you're being a little bit hard on the average man. I mean, you look at games like Minecraft and all.
When it comes to modeling, well, but your average person can't make a mod in Minecraft. They don't know how to make an object in Minecraft. They can.
Your average person is not playing in VR though.
With pre-made things. But those are very blocky. But for it to be something that's bigger than life, like a metaverse that people are going to escape into, it has to be more realistic than Minecraft. That's what I'm saying. It can't be super blocky. It can't be super.
No.
generic.
I'm not saying it does. I'm not saying this to be blocky. I'm saying people are inherently very creative, and the people that have adopted these technologies, the early adopters of these technologies, are the creative types. They're the nerds and the gamers and those people that tend to be a little bit more creative than, I agree with you, the average Joe Schmo. For example, I'm not a very creative person. I mean, I could be the first to admit that. But damn, there's a whole hell of a lot of really creative people that have access to these devices. I don't know what they were spending the money on, because they never showed anything that was worth even 10% of all the money that they spent. It seemingly never existed.
And I think that Minecraft is the perfect example of that. People may not know how to make all that, but if you give them time and a little bit of creativity, they can make some really cool things. That's what I'm saying. You mix that with VR to where it makes something impressive, to where they don't have, it's not blocky. Like the AI will go in and put in the details for you, or smooth it out, or do something more than what you can do with the keyboard and mouse while sitting there just kind of generally designing things. I think that's the kind of thing, to where you put in the time like you would with making something really big in Minecraft without having to have all the knowledge of how to make it better than Minecraft.
Yeah. Agreed.
So we'll see. Where it's going, who knows? Another thing here, we've got the economy as far as hardware sales.
Sure.
Motherboards, I found this interesting, in 2022. So all these numbers so far have been talking specifically about 2022, just last year. Motherboard sales dropped by as much as 55%.
Damn.
So people not buying hardware. That's a huge drop. I think you would see something very similar with video cards having, well, here, let me, I'll bring one up here because I've got one in another section. Video cards saw a huge drop. They reached their lowest point since 2005 in sales last year. That's another thing where they're just doing very poorly. I'm trying to see specifically. This was in 2022, lowest desktop card sales since 2005. You can see some of the graphs. They were huge in 2021 and just nosedived down.
Of course they were huge in 2021. Everybody had a bunch of free money from the federal government.
Well, yeah, everybody was putting out these things. Well, also they then realized, well, let's just start jacking up the price of the cards to be a minimum of $1,000. Get a video card. If you think 5 years ago, that's not how it was. You would spend $300 up to $500 for a card, and you'd be like, oh, I'm spending a lot of money for a video card.
Damn straight.
The specialty people were maybe paying $1,000 for some card that was just released. Now you can barely get a card for under $1,000. Well, I think now you're starting to see some sales just recently. But in 2022, you couldn't get a card for under $1,000.
And I think if you look back at it seems like 2022 was just yesterday. And while, December was just yesterday, January 2022 versus December 2022 in terms of the broad economy, very different. Yeah. Early 2022, inflation was even during the summer months of 2022, inflation was at 9.5%. People can't afford to buy a new computer. It's, again, we're talking about, in a majority of cases, pure luxury, right? That's the kind of purchase that it would be classified as. And the economy in 2022 was miserable, contrary to what you might hear from the current administration about, this is
the best economy since
listen here, Jack Curry, listen here, Fats, the economy, 12 million. See ya. We're out of here. Something like that. It wasn't that great. It really wasn't. Yeah. A lot of people were really kind of feeling the pinch and feeling the hurt, and you're absolutely gonna. I'm part of this class, Brian. I have a 1070. I've wanted a new GPU for well over a year, and now the supply is finally starting to come back. But I can't justify, with the current state of things, I can't justify taking $800 out of my bank account and putting it towards a GPU. I'm nervous. I'm a little worried.
I also look at the prices of the cards. I don't know which card is the better deal.
Yeah, it's
because they've got there's prices. It seems like all of them are super high priced. And it used to be, the 1080. Let me go find the best price of a 1080 because that was the good card at the time. Yeah. A reasonable card. It wasn't ridiculous like those $1,000 cards, which people were buying for some reason. It was really clear what the cards were, and now you've got such a mix of cards where 3000 series are as expensive as 4000 series, and which one is the one that's actually going to be a better card for the buck? And that's what I want to know. If I'm going to spend this kind of money, it doesn't seem like, because the prices are so up and down and everywhere, there's not like, this card's the better card for the money. And now they have so many variations out, where they used to have the 70 series and then the 80 series and the TI. And I just feel like they've added all these different variations of the card to where, the 2070 and the 2080, are those good? They're versus the 3070 and the 3080. But they're both $1,000. So what's the difference? Like, why they both cost $1,000? Why hasn't one dropped?
Yeah.
Before recently. And I think now they're starting to actually go down to where now I may consider getting a card. But during 2022, they both cost $1,000. What was the difference? Why did one series of card never drop? Because the supply was so low that you were paying the same price regardless of the performance of the card. People were just wanting to get what was available. So, let's talk here a minute for some of the other things, because I have some information on video cards.
Sure.
That's one thing I asked myself. So NVIDIA is supposedly, because remember they talked about, $1,000 is what cards should be priced at. Of course, the CEO of NVIDIA was like, yeah, we believe that's the right place for prices of video cards. $1,000. It finally hit the point where they're supposed to be. I was just like, are you insane?
Yes.
I'll buy a computer for $1,000. I'm not buying a video card that's the cost of all the rest of the hardware in my computer.
Yeah, you're not you're not a professional overclocker. You're just a regular guy trying to play some video games.
I want something to play a video game. And so here they're going to be shipping newer GPUs to partners for RTX 40 series, which is supposed to be cheaper.
Great.
Because what they do is they create these chipsets, they send them to PNY and to EVGA and all these other companies.
Anymore, but
well, yeah, but they ship them out to these other companies to sit there and make cards from. And so now they're going to have this 40 series, which, is it going to, remember when the new card was cheaper than the old cards, when there was like that transition where they had these like, what was it, 1090s or whatever they were? I don't even remember what they are now. But then like another generation of card came out and they were cheaper than the previous one. But they had better performance because people didn't want to mark down the prices of these stupidly high-priced cards.
Well,
let's see with these if that changes.
There's a little bit of context with this that's important with NVIDIA specifically. The reason I jumped in there and said EVGA no more. EVGA jumped out of the essentially the third-party market for NVIDIA because NVIDIA is selling them the cards at cost. So there's literally no margin, meaning that they have to put all this work into it, and they can put hardly any markup into it. Oh, and by the way, NVIDIA is selling Founder Edition cards on their website at the MSRP that third-party vendors like EVGA are buying the cards from NVIDIA. So it's just literally zero-sum business. There's no margin, literally. And
that's the issue. I think NVIDIA especially, just thinking that they couldn't be touched when it came to people's opinions. 100%. Well, one thing is ATI or AMD has been really pulling a lot of good cards. And so I think it's starting to turn on them that NVIDIA is no longer viewed as the only type of card you can get. And people are starting to buy these AMD cards. And I'd be more open because the prices are a lot better on AMD cards. I just don't know the AMD series enough to know which ones are great. But for me, I'd be willing to go do some research and figure out what AMD card is really good. Of course, hopefully they lower these prices enough. They need to start putting them out to these vendors to where they can sell it at a reasonable price because that's why all these cards cost so much. They're building these chipsets at cost and then turning around and selling them at a markup. And then all of a sudden you have cards that are priced way beyond what's normal, where they should be at all. And NVIDIA's just nodding their head saying, oh, this is all fine. This is fine as, their sales are in flames behind them. And then claiming that they have a shortage of parts. So we got to keep charging you $1,000 for this hardware. It made no sense.
No, couldn't agree more.
So we'll see where that goes. Another thing that they're looking at doing to try to, I guess, kind of cut down on the type of hardware they need is using AI. We've heard a lot about AI, but they're looking at using AI-enhanced graphic drivers to boost performance by 30%. So NVIDIA's been more into the whole AI thing than AMD has. But, some of these things is improving the clarity of images, of the picture. I've seen some examples of this to where you don't have to put as much detail in the AI adds detail, all kinds of crazy things. Who knows how they'll end up using it in here. But, I do see that as a possibility of a way to, get a little bit of a performance increase. But either way, you're going to have to do some computing. So sometimes I hear these promises, and I'd like to see it in action first before I go all in on this, because AI sounds cool, but right now it's just because it's a new thing and people are saying, oh, we're going to use AI in this and we're going to use AI in that. Well, show me how it works and show me that it actually works first.
You remember, it wasn't that long ago it's still kind of happening. Blockchain. It's the equivalent of, it's the new blockchain. It's the term that everything is using to woo.
We're going to use blockchain in video games. Okay, why?
We did a whole show
video
on
game. Yeah,
we couldn't really find the reason.
What's the point in some of these games versus a regular server? Why are you using blockchain? Other than, you could use it to kind of fight against hacking, but you're still having to put a bunch of security to prevent them from inserting into the blockchain. Like, They just want to use it because it's a new technology. That's my worry about this. AMD is saying that they're not going to be using that. They won't have users paying for features they never use when it comes to AI and GPUs.
Well, and I will say one of NVIDIA's big things is some of their, I think they're called their high efficiency cores or something like that, or maybe that's on GPUs or CPUs. There's something that's in the NVIDIA cards that is great for machine learning and things, and they even sell specific cards just for that. But it's a great example of RTX, and I was watching a Linus Tech Tips video a couple of weeks ago, and they showed the stats of like users that use RTX, and it's some piss poor number, Brian. Like 8% of people that have RTX cards use RTX because it's just not there's just nobody cares.
Yep.
So that is true.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
You can pack these things with features. If nobody uses the features, it doesn't. You're just spending money.
Yep. And that's the thing. They don't want to put AI into a card just to say, well, we put AI into a card and then have to. Yeah. That's the problem. I think that's the difference between AMD and NVIDIA. NVIDIA is like, well, we're going to make sure this card costs $1,000. Rather than saying, well, how can we get this card back to $300 or $400 so that everybody has one? They're like, well, let's put everything we can into this and make it $1,000 because they don't want that price of an average card to drop. They love the $1,000 price point. So, hey, look, well, why would I pay $1,000 for it? We got AI. We put AI in 30% better performance. Well, 34% better performance than what? Like you could have just put a little bit better chip in there, give me 30% better performance. What are you talking about? They're all in comparison to what? You can always say 30% better. Well, compared to what? Put a little faster memory and I get better performance. Put a little more memory, maybe I get better performance. I think that you're basing it on if I only did this in the card and then I put AI onto it, I get 30% better performance. Okay, but how much is that costing me? Would me paying a little bit more or paying the same price for a little bit better chip in the card, would that be the same performance boost without the AI? Then put AI on top of it if I want to later? Like, why are you charging me for the AI? That's my problem.
Because I'll go back to how you started the conversation. NVIDIA was Intel a couple of years ago before the new AMD Ryzens came out. They were the hot shit in town. They could do nothing wrong, and you had no other option but to buy them. Intel learned that the hard way, and NVIDIA is going to learn it the hard way too. I tell you what,
AMD is back on top. I've been an AMD guy for you guys have made fun of me because my heater.
Yeah, you do. You are running an FX series. Yeah.
No. I now have a new AMD chip, but that
last
one was
week.
hot. Yeah,
you just got
weeks ago, but yeah. But the thing is AMD, then was not doing very well. But if you look, people have said, oh, they're not going to be able to compete with Intel ever. Well, now they're beating Intel, and Intel did not see it coming. And I'm hoping that this happens to NVIDIA to get that competition back, because we always talk about competition in the marketplace makes everything better. And I think when these two companies thought that they could not be competed with, then they just started jacking up the prices and didn't even really try to compete anymore. And now it's turned around on them, which I'm glad about.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Steam hardware survey, and I was hoping it would look a little bit better for Team AMD. But like, for example, these aren't really good. No, I guess none of these numbers are really jumping out as them making any serious headway.
Well, I'm talking about recently.
This is recent.
On the Steam one, you're going to see a lot of old hardware on the Steam.
You will, but you would see if you had like a really popular AMD chip that was jumping up, like if the RX 580 was really you'd see it like 0.08% or some jump up, and it really isn't. None of the AMD chips are really doing that. You've got this. Well,
one, they just when I bought mine, they just dropped the prices of their Ryzen 9 chips, and so I think you're now starting to see those get purchased and
on
get
the
market.
CPU
but I think
side,
with the economy, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the video card side yet. I know that they're starting to make headway. I'm talking about the CPU side, that they're really making a lot more headway than they used to. Because if you look at, they showed that
from September,
they're starting to come back.
from September to January, which doesn't sound like a big percentage, but AMD's up almost over 1.5%. And AMD is, or an Intel is down in that category. Doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're talking about, in this case of the Steam hardware survey, hundreds of thousands, millions of computers that are playing into this, to move 1.5% in one direction over a 4 or 5 month period is a massive number shift.
And so that's starting to change, and I think we're just starting to get to the point where the AMD video cards are being viewed in a positive light compared to the NVIDIAs. And maybe with them coming out with these cheaper chips and coming out with cards that are more reasonably priced, that'll keep them kind of ahead in this competition. But if they continue with this, everything is $1,000 minimum video card, I just don't see how they're going to maintain a market share going forward. Because I saw an article on, I don't know, PC Gamer or PC Magazine or something like that, where it's like, who's buying these cards? These $1,000 plus cards. But
people
are buying them, but during how are they affording them? Who's buying all these? And I think it was when they were putting out all of these checks, for the government, people were turning around and buying the video card. Every month and a half, every month I get a $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 check from the government. Well, time to get a video card. Let's send it to China and Japan. And rather than what it was supposed to be used was to boost the local economy.
Yeah.
And now that those checks are slowing down and people are really feeling inflation and actually having to buy food, now you're starting to see people caring about the prices again.
Yeah. Saul Greatman's got a comment in the chat. He says, AMD has decades of driver problems that gives me pause on jumping ship. Now, if you're talking about the processor
video
side,
cards probably.
Yeah, well, on the processor side, I wouldn't worry about that as much. On the video card side, yeah, I'm sure that is a real problem. But I'll tell you what, I was watching a tech YouTuber the other day who I watch pretty regularly, and he's had an AMD GPU in his main rig for well over 6 months now, and he said that he's been very pleasantly surprised with it thus far. And I tell you what,
I think they've been doing a lot better.
They have been, and NVIDIA keeps running with this $1,000 MSRP shit. And AMD is just going to swoop. Even if AMD's cards are less superior, people aren't going to have a choice. At some point, I'm going to need something better than a 1070, and I'm not going to be able to afford I'm not going to spend $800 on a GPU. It's just not going to happen.
So here's something. I was watching a Linus Tech Tips, and he was talking about those new Intel Arc cards.
I watched that.
Where they released it, and it's got good performance in certain areas as long as it's newer things. But it sounds like they had a lot of problems, and they ended up just pricing it down to get them out the door. I don't think there's going to be a lot, But if you're playing old games, don't do it. But if you're looking for something just to run, your desktop and maybe do some video editing and things that might require some 3D, those are good cards to get for the price. Who knows what kind of issues you may run into, if they limit the support and don't continue putting out driver updates for it. Yeah. But, I was hoping that would come out and be a little more competition in the video card market.
Yeah,
but it doesn't look like it's going to be for them.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk quickly here. China, their game sales in 2022 dropped over 10%. Now, one reason would be because they were not approving any games for a long time. No new things were coming out, and they were really just tightening down on everything in the gaming market. The mobile games there, which is over 70% of their games revenue, dropped 14.4%. And then their PCs, made up. I have to see where it is in here. I'm not seeing the PC ones. But this is something that for them, I think kind of made them come around and say, wait a minute. We're losing a lot of money, because they had a bunch of morals and saying, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that. And then all of a sudden they turned around and changed everything. I think when they realized how much money they were losing, because they saw a drop of 10.3% in revenue, falling to 269.5 billion won, which is $40.1 billion. That's a pretty big drop. Playing games dropped 0.33% to 664 million, the number of people. So China, of course, is trying to turn things around, not in time, though, for Tencent, because they now say that they're making personnel adjustments after reports of layoffs, and so they're going to be notifying the units more than 300 staff that they would be given 2 months to find new internal external opportunities at the company, disbanding different departments. So that the restrictions that China had made quite a big difference over there. But of course, one thing that I find odd is now they're trying to make a huge comeback. They're buying up more studios. Here, China, they're NetEase, which is a Chinese company.
Yep,
has bought a couple of studios. The studio that made like Halo Infinite and Minecraft, they bought that studio. What was it? It's Skylab or Skybox
Labs. Yeah.
So they purchased them. They also purchased Quantic Dreams, which made some of those kind of PS4 games like Detroit Could Become Human, Beyond Two Souls, Heavy Rain, things like that. That one they bought for 100 million euros because one thing they've been doing is not building these places in China. They've been purchasing in Europe. Having Chinese development companies in Europe. Skybox Labs is a Canadian gaming studio, so they're spreading out and getting their Chinese firms. Some are here. We've got a number of them here. Riot, for instance, and they're really spreading out and buying American companies so they're not limited and at risk when China starts to do these limitations. Because look at what it's doing to Tencent. It's causing a lot of problems with Tencent. So
they've killed their own game studio. It's essentially killed their own game studio from the inside and for people that aren't familiar, in China, because they're such they're a communist country and they're very restricted, they have to approve games and it has to go before essentially like a commission for it to be approved. And there was a very large period of time in 2022 where and by the way, we were talking about like tens of thousands of games a month that were flowing through this point and clicks, mobile games, just rehash garbage coming on the market. That number, which would at some times was over 10,000 games a month that they were approving, went down to like 60, 80, 150 games. Like it was some minuscule amount.
Well, they went a couple of months without approving a single one,
which just completely destroyed it.
Yeah. Well, okay, so now here I have an article talking about this. China's relaxing its tech crackdown, but it's still keeping a close eye on Tencent. So here's how they've decided to fix the problem. So rather than having all these harsh approaches that they had for the last 3 years here, as you can see the title, for share deals, they give it a supervisory role on company boards. So the exchange is you now have government communist officials on your game company boards to supervise and make sure you guys are following everything that the communist government wants you to do in exchange for being able to continue to make games.
So, hold on a second. If I were a communist, Brian, this is perfect. You can't ask for a better deal.
Yeah. Well,
you talk about people like, oh, people give Tencent a hard time. It's not a Chinese owned and run company.
Yep.
Okay. Well.
Yeah. So what they're doing is
card-carrying communists on the rolls of, and by the way, this isn't just Tencent's Chinese company. This is Tencent as a whole, which is responsible and owns companies in the United States like, I don't know, the folks that make League of Legends, Riot, that owns a portion of Epic Games, that owns a portion of many studios.
Ubisoft, you list them off. They own a big percentage of hundreds of game studios.
Oh, yeah.
And so now what they're doing is they're giving what they call special management shares or golden shares in the company to the Chinese government so that they can then have say into what happens. Now, they say these golden shares are relatively tiny, around 1%, but confer rights over particular business decisions and appointments made at the company in which they're taken. So these golden shares allow them to have certain things that they can make happen or not let happen in the company. It's frustrating because they're controlling, now the Chinese Communist government is controlling many aspects directly, not just through pressure and wink, wink, nod, nod, directly controlling many of the games that we love, their head studios. That's what this really means. And at what point, especially, look at the way that the world governments are going right now. I mean, Russia just got rid of their last nuclear agreement with us, so they supposedly have no more nuclear restrictions with us that they're upholding. You got China, who's making moves and supplying weapons to Russia to be used in the war. We're supplying war weapons to the opposite side. If we go to war with Russia, which you before you would say that's not going to happen. Well, I think there's a big possibility. China's going to be on the Russia side. Then we're going to be cutting off all things with China and Russia. What happens to all these companies? You're either your game's going to go and no longer be allowed to be produced in the United States, or what are we going to do? Take over their companies? Are we going to go and say, "Oh, you're a Chinese company. You're now owned by the United States government"? Like, how is this going to happen?
Well, yeah, I'd like anybody to try that, and they will be quickly shot dead and killed by the communist regime over in China. That's a real quick. That's a one-way plane ticket, Brian, to go over there and try and do that. But I'm saying here we have like Riot Games here is in the United States. Correct. If we go to war with Russia and China's on their end, what happens to Riot here? Who owns that? Under the current administration, nothing will happen.
Well, I'm sure that they'll continue friendly. But under allow companies
under a sane administration, they would. I don't know exactly what they would do. They wouldn't seize control. They could presumably seize control. Now,
what were they going to do with TikTok? Remember what they were going to do with TikTok? Because they said TikTok was taken over.
They were going to ban it.
No. Well, yeah, but he was going to make it to where you couldn't do anything with TikTok in the United States.
Yeah, they were essentially going
to. And that Microsoft had to sell all of its shares.
Correct.
Remember, I think that's what they were saying.
Yes.
Well, they're going to have to do the same thing with Riot. What forced them to quick sell or force Riot to be bought by another company? And that stuff's all around the corner, and they own so many of the market. Yeah. Like that's going to be a big problem for video games.
It is, and it's so funny because you're talking about serious geopolitical ramifications. And because it's so entrenched in every facet of our lives, that could completely hamstring the video game industry.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think people realize.
Related. I can't believe it's even in the same conversation.
The Chinese Communist government owns a majority of our video game studios in the United States. What happens if we go to war with them? What happens to the video game industry in the United States?
We get a lot of really good pro-Chinese video games that start getting pumped out by these studios. Just straight CCP propaganda.
All of a sudden, yeah, we're gonna allow that. I mean, I'm sure as long as the big man gets his cut, everything will be all right.
10%.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah,
10%. We're good to go. You can do whatever you want. Just put it over the air to national television, CNBC or NBC. They'll air it. Yeah, we got this.
It's fine. No, there's no problem.
So it's just crazy. I just think that. We're ignoring that whole fact, the fact that we're both applying opposite sides of a war, yet we have all these supposedly friendly things going on between the countries. One is sending arms to the opposite side, and we're sending arms to the Ukrainians. Like, you don't think that we're total opposites, yet we sit there and let them do business in our country and act like it's totally normal. It's correct. It's crazy. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So, okay. One more thing here. China approves 87 new video games, including titles by Tencent and Alibaba. So that was something that now we've talked about them starting to turn this around. This is in the last 2 weeks that this happened. So all of a sudden now they're approving all these games. Got 87 new approvals of things that are going to come out, and Blizzard was kicked out. Remember, we talked about it a little bit, but Blizzard was kicked out altogether.
Yes.
No World of Warcraft left over anymore. You can't do anything that's a Blizzard game has been removed, and now they're replacing them with these Chinese clones. You have games that are almost identical. They have a new World of Warcraft that they have put in there that they're now saying is their World of Warcraft. And so I don't know. We'll see. It seems like they're trying to separate themselves, maybe because they know what's coming. I have a feeling Biden doesn't know what's happening, But you know what? I think that they are preparing for something, and there's a reason that they've been pushing out Americans from China for years now. They've been getting them out of the country. Same thing with Russia. They just recently said, get all Americans needs to get out of the country, and this was in the last couple of weeks. Now all of a sudden they're talking about nuclear war, and we've been threatened by Russia that they're willing to use nukes in the war now.
Yes, as of today, yes.
So obviously some things are starting to happen. They're getting out all the American companies and creating pretty much trying to make them self-sufficient when it comes to the video game industry again, so people don't get influenced by the outside propaganda of the United States, according to them, right? So it's just crazy. I think that something big is coming, and I hate being right after the fact when it's something like this, but I think some big things are coming that are going to really suck, and I think we see kind of the writing on the wall when it comes to these little decisions and things that China's doing, Russia's doing. But I hope I'm wrong. Right? I'd rather have this one be I was totally 100% off on this one. But all of the things the little indicators that they're doing seem to point that direction. So it'll be interesting to see how we handle it. If escalations happen, and we have them so tightly entrenched. They're buying all these companies on our lands. They're buying farmland here. They're highly entrenched in our land holdings and government. What's going to happen if we actually go to not having friendly relations with them anymore? So, one other thing, Riot, since we're talking about Chinese companies, their source code was stolen for League of Legends, and they've refused to pay the ransomware.
Well,
so.
The Chinese government is not paying ransom. Yeah, that's one thing for sure. They're like, no, this is our game that we play. We're not playing your game. You're playing our game.
How can you steal our game? We stole it in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. So, we stole it in anyway. So that doesn't count at all.
So, yeah, League of Legends and Teamfight Tactics and a legacy anti-cheat platform were stolen using a social engineering attack that occurred here in the last couple of weeks. So,
well,
who knows what'll come out of that? I'm sure more cheats and things like that.
I'm trying to think. What is their anti-cheat is proprietary? Then it's not. It must be.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they're on now, but it's probably some local thing that they had. The anti-cheat, they said it was a legacy one, so it's been already replaced. So the anti-cheat they're not as concerned about, but people having access to the actual game source code allows them to find bugs and glitches and take advantage of things and put in hacks. Because if you have access source code, it makes it really easy to make a hack because you can find the ways to get into the code. So
big time.
We'll see if anything comes of that. But that was something that happened here in this past month, that you see all these ones that'll pay the ransoms. China says no. We're not paying ransom for any of this. So
not here, Jack. Find somewhere else.
All right. Is there anything else you wanted to cover before we head on out? No,
sir. Pretty interesting show. Not exactly the direction I thought, but as the great Bob Ross would say, just a happy little accident down here. So there you go.
Well, hey, if you want to find me, of course, you can find me at Boise Computer on Twitter, at Brian Aldridge on Gab, Parler, Getter, and Truth Social, or my blog, biteoftech.com. If you go to our website, infectionpodcast.com, we have a place that you can go join our Discord server, which has a nice little thing to let you join either our politics channel or ARC channel. We've got a news channel if you want to post links that we can refer to and maybe get into the show. If you want to watch the live show, you can do that through Twitch or YouTube. Of course, you can listen to the show through the lower right-hand platforms. Lots of different ways to listen, but those are recorded and uploaded after the fact. And if you're going to do that, that means that the particular episode show notes are ready to go. So you can go click on it. There's a nice video and audio player built in, and then links for everything that we discussed. So maybe if you want to see some of our more source material, things that we were using to refer to during the show, you can do that and maybe have a lightweight listen with some video mixed in. So.
Yep, absolutely. And there's also a couple of great ways that you can support us. You can do that over on infectionpodcast.com/support. Brian, as always, thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. We will see you next week. Folks, thanks for joining us, as always. Greatly appreciated. You can check me out on Twitter at Nicholas M. Craig. You can check out my day gig over at the Wilmington's Morning News Podcast. You can find details on that at nickcraig.com. Of course, as Brian mentioned, if you missed any portion of the program or maybe want to go back and check out some portions of the show, head on over to our website. It's infectionpodcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.